Good afternoon to you all. It's an absolute honor to be here today at such a prestigious institution in front of prospective innovators and entrepreneurs. You can follow me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. I don't want to go too much into my profile because we're here to talk about innovation and entrepreneurship. Some of you in the room, most likely, already are innovators and entrepreneurs. Maybe you just don't know it, or maybe you do. But I'm not here to define innovation or entrepreneurship, or who is not an entrepreneur. But what I'm here today is to share with you guys what we see on a daily basis on the ground, every day, throughout our journey and our work with innovators and entrepreneurs, the reality that we face in our beloved continent, Africa. When Yunus, in fact, invited me to speak at this exciting conference, I could sense from the tone of his voice and the types of questions he was asking me, the perception that he had of innovation and entrepreneurship in Africa. But he's not the only one. All of us had a particular perception, and we still do have a particular perception of Africa. And maybe it used to look something like this. Or maybe it looked like something like that. Or even like this, with all the tapes and type of, things that we are used to in thinking when we think about how people try to make meet needs. But in reality, it's increasingly looking like something like this, which is an ortho hand designed and manufactured by a Tunisian entrepreneur out of Germany, addressing a market of hand amputations that is 12 million people deep. 9.5 million of those related to the developing region of the world. And so, this tells you that it's, potential for innovation and entrepreneurship exists. And it's actually being proven on a daily basis. Another marquee potential that we see today and that actually exists is the ecosystem of innovation and entrepreneurship that's being developed in our continent. Google just decided to open an artificial intelligence DeepMind team based in Accra, in Ghana. In South Africa, there is one of the strongest artificial intelligence, deep learning ecosystems in the world, focused on addressing these very issues that we face today in our continent. From state-of-the-art teaching to policy debates with local governments and regional governments, through support programs that they've put in place by bringing in the community and debating on tough programs and issues. But why all of this? Why is this all being implemented? What drives innovation in Africa? Well, the short answer is problems, right? Makes sense. What are the problems today that we face in Africa? Well, we have great inequalities. Usually, in any country you go to in Africa, typically you see 2-3 parallel worlds. Significant gaps in wealth distribution, financial exclusion, access to energy, healthcare. Just basic needs and services are not addressed today. Poor infrastructure. We have very low, insufficient and insufficient funds, resulting in a poor infrastructure for our daily lives. From transportation to communication services, it's just not working. Low productivity, fragmented industries, from agriculture to textile. The whole supply chain is not as professional as you may expect it to be when you actually want to produce or distribute a product and get it to the hands of people living in those regions. Low technology adoption. How many of you have gone to the African administration and were frustrated to inquire about a birth certificate, basic needs. And yet, it takes 2, 3, 4 days, if not more, to obtain that piece of paper. Talking about productivity, how many of you have gone to a North African country and hang out at a coffee shop for 4 or 5 hours, enjoying a hookah and doing nothing? Part of the culture, you would say, right? But it engages people to change that and innovate. Another aspect is regulation. Inadequacy of regulations do not apply to what we see today, to what we want to have as a society today. So it's extremely frustrating, and people are demanding, and they want change. Whether it's markets that are closed, where foreign investors are frustrated because they can't get their money in and out of the country, whether it's limitations on trade, you can't export or import certain goods and services, whether you cannot send money outside of your own jurisdiction because there are FX issues that the country is dealing with, or because the financial resources of the country have limited FX reserve that do not allow you to do certain transactions. And so all of these issues are real, and they exist, and they're being faced by the local communities. And so what are some of the things that innovators are doing in Africa? How are they enabling all of these issues? Well, first of all, Africa, the African population is one of the fastest growing populations in the world. Urbanization is growing by the minute. Changes, I mentioned earlier, in consumer behavior. We want more, we demand more. We see what's going on outside of our borders. Social media has revolutionized our level of information. We've talked about that over lunch, and seeing how much information is out there and thinking that the grass is always greener on the other side pushes people to actually innovate, because not everyone can go abroad. And so as we move over and try to create things of our own, we're trying to leapfrog what exists today in our economies and what exists today in developed markets to create something that's only going to work in our economies. You know, we have a few examples that I tried to show with pictures from e-commerce. You know, creating platforms where you send a driver, and instead of paying by card, you can pay your driver in cash when your good is delivered. That's not something that exists in the West. Everyone pays with a credit card online. So that's adapted to the local requirements and local culture, because there is a trust issue with financial systems. There is a lack of financial inclusion. Not everyone is bankable or has a credit card. And so these things can create a dynamic where you professionalize processes without foregoing the actual needs of everyday life. And so you create also a new infrastructure on my left side, on your hand side at the top, you see a drone. That's a drone that transports medical goods and medical products from point A to point B in Rwanda, because the roads are so bad that you can take that even 10 kilometers without spending too much time before it's too late. And so this is a startup called Zipline, and it was created in San Francisco, but it was developed for the Rwanda markets and for the entire region. So that's exciting, because we don't have to wait until the roads are built to actually address a particular issue in our continent. You know, Momo Cash, mobile money, off-grid technology, by installing solar panels all over the region where we have abundant levels of sun. All of these things are helping us leapfrog infrastructure and technology. Another enabler is the brain circulation. You know, there's a growing convergence of people with talent and drive to change Africa. You know, a good example, and we were also discussing about this earlier at lunch, is the diaspora. Some of you here, you know, came from African countries and are, you know, gaining great experience at the school. And maybe you will get a job that will, will build transferable skills. that will be useful for our continent and for our economies. And so we need people like you guys to come back and contribute to the development of our economy. Then, more and more, we're seeing in certain countries of Africa a certain openness by local governments. Kenya is one of the best examples I can mention. You know, most of you have probably heard of M-Pesa, which is revolutionizing, or has revolutionized the way mobile money and transfer of money has been done locally. You know, from the smallest transaction to larger transactions. You know, it's inspired other business models to create similar models for their own economies. Now we see micro-lending, we see microfinancing, we see micro-insurance. You know, all these platforms that are improving and adapting to the constraints and needs of local populations. And as a result, we're seeing hundreds of innovation hubs that have spurred all over the continent. You know, today, there are literally dozens and dozens of people contributing to the emergence of a stronger, innovative, entrepreneurial ecosystem that is well connected and well adapted to everyday's needs. So you look at the biggest countries, South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, you know, these have 50 to 60 hubs. And that goes from incubator programs to accelerator programs to co-working spaces, you know, all trying to foster innovation and entrepreneurship and drive for a better tomorrow. In fact, so much so that since 2012, VC investments in Africa have grown tenfold. From $53 million invested in 2012 to almost $573 million as of last year in a whole host of sectors. That's an annual growth of 40%. And we're not going to stop here. You know, there are funds being raised that will get us to spend at least $1 billion by 2020. So that's exciting. There's a booming opportunity for VC investments, but also for entrepreneurs and innovators looking to create solutions and develop products for our local economies. Which is why, for us at AfricInvest, we've been promoting and celebrating innovation and entrepreneurship through advocating for better laws and regulation. We lobby local governments, we lobby local associations and confederations to help send a message and improve the way we do things in a more efficient manner to help us get the message across, get funding across, help innovators deploy their ideas and solutions, and create a better environment for us all. You know, we support innovation hubs and entrepreneurship programs. We partner up with some of the best in the world in adapting what they've learned and what they've deployed in their own markets and adapt them to our own entrepreneurship programs. We try to also partner up with educational programs to improve Africa's talent pool. You know, this is a great example of respective partnerships that we seek to help foster innovation and entrepreneurship and create a belief that any one of you guys and any one of us has the potential to be impactful and create change for a better tomorrow. We're also building bridges within and out of Africa. So we create win-win programs and situations where we bring in investors, advisors, government officials, private investors, and institutions and large corporations to improve the pie instead of each focusing on the same piece of pie. We want a bigger pie and we want everyone to benefit from it. And we partner up with all of these guys to make it happen. And so all of this has become near and dear to our hearts, but also near and dear to our strategy. And a strategy that as a fund manager, as an investment manager, we want to deploy through a continent-wide approach. So historically, as a firm, we started off in Tunisia back in 1994, and we focused on Tunisia alone. Then in 2000 we went into Morocco, and then a couple of years later we went into Algeria to create a regional fund. And then we did the first generation, second generation. We went into sub-Saharan Africa to have a dedicated fund for investments in sub-Saharan Africa. And now I think it's time to consolidate all of this, and we believe that it's time to consolidate all of this. Because how can we promote innovation if we don't innovate ourselves? Right? Over the past few decades, you've seen the emergence of social and environmental impact funds. The problem with these business models is that they have evolved faster than our funding approach. You've got in theory things that are supposed to work, but in reality, when you try to execute on them, it doesn't work. And so these solutions have to evolve, and it's almost like, I'll give you a simple example. How can you ask an Amazon to build brick and mortar logistics platform or retail stores where they can just have a logistics center and a few drivers and get you your product within half a day? They're not going out and building brick and mortar solutions. They're focusing on what they do best, and it's fast logistics. And that's what we're thinking as we launch these new development funds. AfricInvest is going to be the largest Pan-African fund that we're launching. It's a $500 million fund, and it will be addressing a particular void in the market, which is in the $30 to $50 million investment range. Another innovative program and fund that we're launching is called Finance. It's a financial inclusive vehicle dedicated to the financial sector. And what's innovative about this fund is it's supporting the strategic transformation of the financial sector in Africa. And by doing that, we're also positioning this fund to be an evergreen fund, which means that it doesn't have an expiration date. It's a 99-year-old fund that will have liquidity preferences as investors come in, and that will fund the right entrepreneurs and innovation solutions as they come along, without having the pressure of having to exit when we haven't been able to create enough value for our shareholders. Another example, and a couple of examples that I show here, investee companies of this new vehicle, InstaDeep, which is an artificial intelligence company that was created in Tunis and now based in London and Paris as well. And you see here the CEO at the last F8 conference in Palo Alto, doing incredible things that you would never believe any African person would be able to do. I still don't understand exactly how he's doing it. And I'm not a reference, I'm just inside the due diligence process, and it's so technical that it's hard for a non-technical person to grasp. And it's quite refreshing and inspiring to see these type of people believing so much in their own capabilities and pushing forward to make things happen and become a reality. And so, you guys probably hear a lot about, blockchain technology, decentralized applications. Well, in this particular case, it's about artificial intelligence, leveraging deep learning and machine learning, applying decentralized technology mechanisms to foster safety in everything we do in our everyday lives. And so this technology that is called homomorphic encryption is basically disrupting the way computers have ever worked since they were created, to enhance its efficiency to heights that only the future will be able to tell how it's exactly going to work, because the applications do not exist today. On the right-hand side, it's a digital bank, the latest bank in Morocco to have obtained a commercial universal license, the first one since over 30 years in Morocco, and it praises itself to become a very lean digital bank geared toward improving everyone's lives. In other words, we don't have to go talk to anybody to deposit a check. We don't have to talk to anybody to deposit cash. We don't have to talk to anybody if we want to block our credit card, increase our limits, or reduce our limits. Everything is done digitally. We don't have to talk to anybody if we want to change our metrics about savings accounts. And this model is extremely disruptive in Morocco because it's a brick and mortar model very slow, very inefficient, centered around having a branch in every corner of every street, and it's just not reflective of our daily needs today as a fast-moving society relying on mobile technology. One last, well, not last, but one more model that I'd like to highlight is a traditional lending platform or non-traditional lending platform that we've developed, and which is addressing lending needs of small entrepreneurs and innovators in Africa. We started in sub-Saharan Africa, and this is a plant farm in Kenya where it was too risky for any equity investor to invest equity, but we found a way to leverage our local presence to lend money to these guys at a preferential rate in a manner that no traditional bank could ever do. You know, we have local presence, we do ESG due diligence, we have observer seats on their board, and we can actually create value as a lender and not just wait for our paycheck on a monthly basis. So, last but not least, our latest and greatest initiative is the AfricInvest Innovation Fund, which is a VC-dedicated fund that is geared towards entrepreneurs and innovators looking to grow their businesses. This is a growth stage fund, and so the idea is to leverage the high mobile penetration and technology wave that we're seeing and allowing entrepreneurs to tackle some of the continent's problems that I mentioned earlier, creating a strong pipeline of startups with promising growth potential. And so the idea is to look at every one of these startups that have demonstrated the ability to create a prototype, to generate some cash flow through revenues, and help boost them up to take their business to the next level. So today we've noticed a big gap in financing super early stage businesses from C to Series A, and there was a gap in Series B that we're looking to fill. And so we're tackling a whole set of issues from last mile delivery to access to quality health to including the informal sector and bringing it as part of our economy and making sure that corruption is subsidized, not subsidized, but it's closed down. I should be careful there. And making sure that there is actually no double markets. And so we want to make sure through the vehicles that we're providing that everyone becomes inclusive. And last but not least, we want to enhance efficiencies. But I'm not here to tell you guys again that what is the right or wrong definition of innovation, because there probably isn't. You can find 50 different definitions of innovations in academia that is proved, and it's probably some of the most overused terms that you can find today. But what I believe in and what we believe as a firm is that it's about understanding, it's about solving, applying, executing, and pivoting and learning as you go. It's about progress. And so 4 verticals that we found through our analysis working in the African continent and that we want to focus our investments on are universal access providers, so supplying better products or services to the underserved. And these are some of the examples I mentioned earlier. Value chain builders, I mentioned Zipline earlier. I can also mention another interesting business, Afrinoli in Nigeria. You've probably seen the news, Zuckerberg was there to visit them, and they're basically using cutting-edge technology to make Nollywood films and distributing them via mobile applications in Nigeria and in the region. So that's disruptive. It didn't exist before. And it's done by African people and for the African people. Another example is African optimizers, enabling a more efficient use of resources. So mHealth is a good example. You know, you've got doctors, you've got people who need doctors, but they don't necessarily talk to each other. And so creating mobile platforms where everyone in most countries today has a mobile platform, Android or iPhone, is the way to go. And we want to promote those, and we want to help those get to more people who need doctors. I already mentioned InstaDeep, but it's another example of a global disruptor that's coming up with a technology that not only going to revolutionize our local ecosystems and economies, but also have an impact on a global basis. And so, most importantly, entrepreneurs are all alike. They're driven. They want to innovate. But whether you believe you can be an innovator or whether you believe you can't, you're probably right. Thank you.